right, everybody, we are doing the Plan Your Year event video with Jay OHare over at Venga CBD.
Hey,
Pretty excited. Just giving you guys some good resources to plan your year out. Really has nothing to do with any of my services or any of his products. We both kind of have a passion for giving some good resources out there and open sourcing things as much as possible. And it was kind of funny. Jay put together this calendar a couple of years ago, and it got really popular as a tool to get people engaged with what he's doing. And I, on a daily basis, am looking at people's schedules and calendars and begging people not to sign up for 20 races in a month. And so it kind of coincides. And I think the big goal today is to just share with you guys and really just show you visually like how short a year really is and how planning really kind of helps get through a year as an athlete, healthy and inspired, motivated to hit those big goals, but also to give you guys some time that you don't have to be training or some concepts on what off seasons can potentially look like. So here in a second, Jay's going to go over the calendar and let you guys know where to find it, where to download it, and all those good things. I got my real life one here sitting right next to me. I'll show you guys here in a second. Then we're going to talk about preseason, in-season, off-season concepts as it pertains to periodizing your training. We'll talk about the importance of taper and recovery. We're not going to pound on that stuff. We're really just giving you guys some tools here. And then I have some things to just kind of pound home as far as things I see with clients on a daily basis. I've been coaching for 15, 20 years, and holding people back is such a big part of my job. So how to hold you guys back so you can actually, push and see better results on your stuff. So Jay, you ready to do this thing?
Yeah, Scott. Thanks for having me. And again, my name is Jay OHare. I'm the founder and CEO of Venga CBD here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And I think Scott, one of the things, and we'll take a look at this training calendar in just a second. I think it's helpful to understand like why I designed this and what the problem was I was trying to solve. And look, I love Strava and I live my life on my iPhone like many people do, and digital stuff is absolutely crucial and it's great. And yet with my training for ultras and other events, I just got frustrated with like this very narrow view of like, I can look at a month and it's in a box and it's week by week. And the thing is, with doing things like these endurance sports, we need to see like a much broader view. Also, when those things live in a digital world, it's kind of hard to access them. And we've got to go find it and pull it out and look at it in whatever size screen that we want. And there's just something very different about having like a big calendar that's on the wall in a different format where you can see the entire year and you can use sticky notes and you can plan things out. It just activates a different part of the brain. And as you're tracking it throughout the year, you can really, at a glance, every day, see exactly where you are without having to plug something in to recharge it. So let me share my screen and I'll give you an idea of what sort of the end product can look like at the end of the year. And then we'll go through like how this happened, right? Okay, so here we go. We've got this is the Venga CBD training calendar. And it's very different than typical calendars that you see because each row is a month. And so the month goes across the entire row. And then, we've got the weekends are marked by these darker lines. So you can see exactly where the weekends are.
Hey, Jay, really quick before you do a deep dive, I was just thinking if people are watching this and they want to go download this and kind of follow along.
Yeah.
Give them that link really quick so we can.
Yeah. So if you go to vengacbd.com/becoming ultra, there's a form right there in the middle of the page and you can get this calendar for free. You can download it right there. So vengacbd.com/becoming ultra, boom, right there in the middle. You can download this calendar for free. And what you'll actually get is you're going to get 4 different designs. And we'll take a look at that in a minute. But that's where you can get it. And the cool thing about it is that it is compatible with your iPad. So you don't necessarily have to get this printed out. What you're going to get when you download it is a PDF pack with 4 different PDFs and some instructions. And you have to, if you want it on your wall, you've got to get it printed. And the good news is that really any printing company that has a blueprint printer can print this, and it costs like $3. You can take it like to FedEx office, or if you have like a local printer there or whatever, you can take it there. It costs like $3 to get this thing printed. And when you do the wall version of it, it's going to be 24 by 36. So it's big, right?
Yeah, here you
And
go.
then
I'll show you. I got this bad boy right here. It's gonna take up
Yeah.
the whole friggin' screen. Look at this thing.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
I
So you
like
got
that.
it. So you've got it printed out. So that's awesome. And it's 24 by 36. And when you download it, you're going to get, there are 4 different headings. So, you know, there could be one in there that speaks to you and you're like, that's the one I want to get printed. And so you get all these plus the instructions. So that's what you get. Cool.
Love it.
All right. So let's go into like how to get this set up and how like we've been using it here for the past number of years to plan our year and track our year and really stay on top of things with this. So a couple of things you're probably going to need. You're going to need like stickies are great because things are, you want to be able to plan and move things around. Some pens and highlighters. If you can do that, like you're in great shape. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do is set the scale. So again, this is a training calendar. So it's got some cool features in here that will help with your training. So it's more than just like a thing that goes up on your wall. So the scale. So what do you mean by the scale? Well, what we did was we put in up here at the top, along the top here, we put in this scale, and you can make this scale to be whatever you want. Now, typically we look at this as like on a monthly basis. So this could be mileage. It could be number of reps. It could be a whole host of things. Whatever you want to track, typically on a monthly basis, you want to set this scale. And so what I mean by that is we're going to take this. And so for example, like if you're a runner, you may say, all right, you know, the maximum I would ever run might be say 200 miles a month. So I'm going to set the max here at the end at say 250 miles. And then
how many units is in there, Jay?
Well, I don't know how many units there are. But what I would just say is, I don't know how many units there are, but it's just, you know, you could get super precise, but it's just like a general thing. So 250, I'm going to go in, I'm going to put in halfway at 125 and then put in the 2 quarters. So now I've got this scale that's set up at the top. All right. Then the next thing that we want to do is add our yearly commitments, like things that we already know that we've got planned. We have graduations and birthdays and vacations and those kinds of things. There could be work conferences. There could be different things out there that you know that are fixed, like boom, these are things that aren't going to move, that we've already got done. And then with that, I would use sticky notes to actually put in things that you think might be coming up. So, you know, there could be this long weekend that you're going on, or there could be some sort of function that you've got to go to, just so that they can be tentative and they can be moved around, but just so that you account for things in your life that are going to be coming up, that are going to, be a part of how you're going to be scheduling your training and when your races are going to fall and those kinds of things. All right. So we get our commitments dialed in. And, sometimes it can be good to use multicolored stickies just because like some things could denote work and some things are personal or kids or whatever. A lot of families use this to track like when their kids start school and when the soccer season starts and all those kinds of like important things that they all need to know about. So they can be super helpful on that end. And then from here, you're like, okay, I've got all my commitments in here. What are the races or events that I want to do? And I use the word desired because oftentimes, especially at the beginning of the year, we don't know if we can get in the race. We don't know if that's going to be the right race for us, depending on how our training is going to go, those kinds of things. So the idea is just to take some sticky notes, figure out what your desired races are, and get those things in there. And then from here, once that's in, we can now begin to say, okay, I'm going to go enter this race. Good, I got in. Or for this one, you know what? This one's not good for me. I'm going to try a different race over here. So that ultimately what you've got is you end up having like, okay, I've got my races that I know that I'm going to do locked in. They're on the calendar. And now I can begin to build my training around what that looks like for those races. Okay. All right, Scott, making sense so far?
Absolutely. I did have to ask you, are one of these birthdays yours?
No.
All right, just
No.
checking.
Exactly, right.
Trying to get you some
But
more. I'm trying
we
get you
want to
some good
remember,
calls.
yeah. I mean, those are good things to have, right?
No, this makes a lot of sense so far. And if you guys are listening to, because I am going to put this out on the podcast, this is a very visual presentation. So the way that this is setting up, we'll have this video out on the Facebook and the YouTube. So just keep that in mind. Listening's fine. Maybe it'll stoke kind of the interest of it, but make sure you go back and watch it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. And then from there, we want to start tracking your year, right? You want to start to track your year. So that means things like putting in like building your training blocks. What do those things look like? When are those things going to be? So you're going to mark those out either with your highlighter or your sticky notes or whatever, so that you know that like these are the times that I'm going to be putting the hammer down, or these are the times that what that looks like. So now we go back to that scale that I talked about earlier, and you can begin to start adding in what you did that month. So, for example, in January, let's just say you did 125 miles in that month or whatever that might be, and you end up putting a dot there. And then in February, you did 175 and you put a dot there. And then you start linking these together to create this really cool graph of your year of like how well you did. And then you can start adding things in like, hey, look, I got sick in February, and maybe I had an injury in April. And so you can just begin to start tracking all these things and tracking and putting in your mileage. And it becomes this, you're building this view of your actions throughout the year. And you can put in what other things that you did. And there could be other wins or vacations or different types of events that happen throughout your year. And as you're tracking this, you're building this whole picture of what your entire 2022 looks like. And you can see so now as we've got this thing built out, you can see this really cool graph. And so, you're working with a coach, your coach can see that and say, hey, look, what happened in June? June was really low. Like what happened there? Well, I had a big race and then I took some time off, and whatever the case is, but you can really begin to see that in a way that you just can't really see with all these other sort of individual siloed applications like Strava or other calendars or things like that. Nothing wrong with those, but this just gives you this big overview at a glance right away. And then, start adding in other things too. Maybe there were special things that happened throughout the year, or there were other achievements or things that were like really great. Like make it yours. Like this is totally up to you to make it however you want. It's just this canvas. And then at the end of the year, you have this phenomenal snapshot of what you did throughout the year, things that you accomplished, things that you didn't accomplish, things that came up. And man, we've been doing this. I think this is our 5th year of creating this calendar and putting it out there. And like you take a picture of this, you look back, and it's really cool to see like the progression of things that you've done year over year. And you have this really great snapshot of how your year went. So that, in a nutshell, is how this can go for you, and how you can use this. And again, you can use it on an iPad. This view right here is actually one that I just sketched up, just kind of goofing around on like what it can look like using an iPad. It can look just like this. So that's another way to do it too. And so I think the main message from this is just make it yours.
Yeah. I love it. I'm just sitting here looking at it, and I'm thinking about, things that I would do different with clients even. And we have the spreadsheets, and we use this, people use their tools and everything. And I think sometimes just making things tactile is powerful. And, being able to put your phone down and stand beautiful mind style in front of a blank canvas like this, and start to really visualize what a year looks like. And I think that's the special sauce in this, because so many times, like, you're looking at microcycles 4 to 6 weeks at a time out of a big training block. And I don't know, it's just funny. Like when me and you first did our the first video call just to get to know each other, I had a huge 4 foot by 8 foot calendar behind me, and it was similar in a lot of ways to this thing, because every month was a row, and I could see the whole year. And when I needed to add things, we'd add them. One thing I would do, I would probably I would put that A race in there, and I would color coordinate my big macro cycle, which would be for most people 4 to 6 or 7 months of training. And then I would put all my little micro cycles in there as a different color, so you can really see where the ramp ups are visually.
Totally.
I think using the metric up top, or the ruler function up top,
Yeah.
is really cool to be able to see miles week, or month over month. I would personally, I'm just spitballing what I would do. I would definitely put some goals for strength training, whether it's sets completed or time spent strength training, because that's an important metric as well. And how it coincides with your running volume is always important, because there's a dance that you have to do with increasing strength versus increasing volume of running and stuff like that. It's just a great tool, man. I love it so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, what I do, like with mine, and maybe I can pull up my one from 2021, but I've got a big magic marker, and when I come in from a run or a weight workout or a yoga session or whatever that is, or like skinning session, I just take a big and write a big letter on that day. So like R for run, W for weight, Y for yoga, like that, and it's really pretty. Like you begin to see this chain that you're building of all these different things, and it's a way to just reinforce that work that you're doing, because I think we can all go through periods of where like it gets long and it gets hard, and what's that motivation that we have, and if this is in a place that you're going to see it every day when you wake up, or you're going to see it every day when you're putting on your gear, it can be a real motivator.
Yeah. And I think just building on your previous days and previous weeks, I remember Jerry Seinfeld was talking about how he set goals. Do you know the story?
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead and tell it. But that's the principle for sure.
Yeah. So how he set goals, he put a calendar up there, and whatever his goal was it to write? Was it to work on certain projects? And he just put an X on the calendar, and his goal was to never have 2 days without an X. And for running and training, like very rarely do you need to have 2 days where nothing's happening, unless it's after a big event where you're recovering from things. So I think seeing that in the span of a whole year is really important. And then I was just thinking, Camille Herron, she just posted her yearly mileage, and it's just wild. I mean, she's getting 5,000 miles a year. I would love to see this calendar for someone that's putting out miles like that. It would just be wild,
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I think let me just say this: if people do want to use the iPad, it's really simple. I recommend. I mean, there's a couple of applications out there. GoodNotes is what I use. I've used Notability, Note Shelf, and GoodNotes, but I think for me, GoodNotes is the best. And it's like $6 to buy it, and it works on all your devices, including your computer. And that's just a really good one to bring this in as a PDF, and then you can do whatever you want to with it. You can even what I think is cool about it too is you can make multiple copies. So if you want to just do some draft work and don't want to mess up your main calendar, you can just duplicate it, do what you want to on there, and then figure it out. Then you can always just trash it later. So, it can be a good way of doing a lot of different planning where you can see the whole year. And I think one other thing, Scott, that you're really good at is people who sign up for a lot of races, and two things. One, a year seems like a super long time. And two, if you're just seeing it in little individual boxes, it's hard to get the context. But signing up for a lot of races can be tough, especially when you look and say, nope, this is your year. This is all you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think let's pull the screen share off and get into some of these concepts and questions we did ask questions from the audience. Before we do that, without getting too into the weeds, I'm just going to talk about 4, 5, 6 concepts when you guys are putting your year together. So if you're new to kind of becoming ultra, what we've done from 6 years, I think this summer will be 7 years. Holy crap. For the last 6 or 7 years is we've open sourced coaching calls with real clients and real coaches, from world-class athletes who happen to be coaches to people like myself, who I've just been a coach for my whole career with my background in exercise science. And so we love to open source these things because we understand not everybody's going to be able to afford a coach. Maybe the timing's not right, where they are in their life, or their training cycle might not make sense, but you can still learn so much from all these different people coming on the show and coming onto these calls to see if there's someone that compares to you. Like there's like Evangeline's a great example. She's a mom of 3 kids out in Colorado, and she's training for her first ultra. But then we have Jeremy in Missouri, who's a single dude who's in school and he's figuring it out. So you can find someone that has a similar background to you and apply some of these concepts. And I'm pretty passionate about open sourcing this stuff. And Jay obviously is too. He's put so much work into just creating resources for you guys. And I think that's really cool. So when I'm going over these resources, these are general principles, guiding principles for how you schedule your self-coached year. And I've told this story a million times and she probably gets sick of it, but one of my former clients, and who's a good friend now, her name's Mo. She's up in the Pacific Northwest now. She sent me a spreadsheet that just ramped up her year into what seemed like infinity miles by week 40. And I told her to sit down for a second, because what she does as a profession is a lot of spreadsheets and organizing and stuff. And I deleted it right during the call, and it was freaking hilarious. But the reason was she wasn't following some of these principles I'm going to talk about. So first principle, the concept of a preseason, a season, and an off season. I've had so many people who want to continue the coaching relationship after the big goal on paper has been done, who want to just get back into the training mode and just get hammering at it. And sometimes that works just fine, but it's usually going to burn most people out. And I think coming off of big events, big goals, and setting a couple months or 4 to 6 weeks aside for working on weaknesses. And some of those weaknesses probably have nothing to do with running, has to do with, body work and mobility and strength work and things that will make you a stronger runner when you get back into training. Off of those off seasons, having a preseason. So there's some prep work. Your mileage might not be as high, but you're still running, but implementing the things that you did in the off season to make your actual season a little bit better. And then most seasons for elite athletes are 6 to 8 months, macro cycles. For most of the people I'm working with, it's like 4 to 7 or 8 months. And then when you get in the season, make sure that your head is there, that you're excited about it, and that you can put an effort in day after day for those 4 to 8 months. It's really important to have the mental capacity to enjoy the stuff. 99.9% of you guys aren't going to be elite athletes, but you want to enjoy the journey. You want to enjoy the event. You want to cover the distance or push yourself, whatever it might be where you are in your journey. And then a few days after, you want to feel like a human being again. You don't want to be completely broken down and destroyed physically and mentally. So that concept of preseason, season, and off season is really important. A few other things that I've just kind of noticed over the years of coaching. Vacations are to unplug and not have the formality of life. And every once in a while, the way that timing works, like, yeah, we do have to have some formal things and vacations, but if you put a vacation on this calendar, just kind of hold that sacred. If you go to Hawaii or something and you end up running 50 miles, good for you. Like you probably enjoyed it. I didn't have to prescribe that to you necessarily, but give yourself a little break every once in a while from the formality of training and thinking about this stuff. And that's really important. I think you can schedule in these times where you disconnect and you don't have to worry about this stuff, so you can come back fresh and happy. Tapers and recoveries, we all know how important recovery is. I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of like a legit physiological taper off of a good 4 to 6 months of training. I've had people sign up for a 50K every 3 weeks and plug in a taper for every 3 weeks. And that's not how it's supposed to work. Like, you're using the terminology for a different goal. Like, you want a little break before you go do another big event. That's fine, but that's not a legit taper. So realize, like, there's got to be a big buildup before you have a taper that's going to really be important for the recovery that you need before a big event. And that kind of goes to probably the last point that I'll make right now, which is you can sign up for a lot of events. That's fine, but there has to be a purpose for a lot of them. If your A race is in 6 months from now and it's 100K, we'll say July, running a 50K every 3 or 4 weeks is exciting, but it's probably not going to serve you well when it comes down to it. So think about the distances and where they would be plugged in your training anyway. So maybe a half marathon would be 2 months in, where you can go push and be around people and have that excitement and look forward to it. And then maybe a month later, there's a marathon, and maybe 2 months later, there's a 50K. And we can call these train through races, where you're covering the distance as you would for a training run, or you can push on some of those, but have a purpose for those events and try to get away from the addiction to events. It's just something that I pound on all the time, and it's not tiresome. I get it. It's exciting to go run events, but it's not exciting to go run them and not see any benefit and wear yourself out. So just make sure you kind of keep that in mind, and go sign up for a race and don't race it. Just go treat it like a regular run. And sometimes that'll serve you well as well. So those are just concepts when you're putting stuff together that you can think about. It's really just it's kind of a regression equation off of other people's mistakes, which is how we train everybody anyway in the science-based training stuff. So keep that stuff in mind.
Got quick question on that.
Yeah.
What do you think is a realistic, as people are planning out their year? What's a realistic number of races? I mean, I know that might be like saying like how long is a piece of rope, but what
Yeah.
what as people are thinking about this, is it 3? Is it 5? Like
we'll say, let's put it into like a 6-month training cycle, because that's kind of a sweet spot where you're not getting burned out, but you're able to ramp up, and you can have you can put some good nervous system training in towards the end, and have a nice taper and all those things. I don't know, like 2 train through events in the 6 months right before your A race. That seems like a sweet spot, because then you're always I don't know, it's kind of like, personally, I like to always have something fun on the calendar to look forward to. So like right now I have March, we have our trail camp out in Palisade, Colorado. And then me and my family are going to go do a trip that we were supposed to do in March of 2020 before the shit hit the fan, So I have that on the calendar, and I know for the next 2 months, I'm hunkering down, I'm working hard. Not that I'm going to work any less hard afterwards. But from a psychological standpoint, it's just a little break in the whole scheme of things. So yeah, 1 or 2 train throughs seems to be a kind of a nice thing, where you're not doing so many that the big race isn't going to be diminished, but you're doing enough to keep it fresh.
Yep.
What would you think in your own experience?
I think one of the things that I have to caution myself on is that typically my eyes are bigger than my schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where this calendar has helped out. But it's like, okay, well, I think I can do all these things, but then like life happens, and so you've got family commitments and work stuff you thought was going to go better than it did, and so now you're being pulled off, and those kinds of things. So that's where, I think I'm with you on that, like having some smaller ones, and not even like saying like those smaller races can be just fun things, like a half marathon, or even, I mean, quite frankly, like even like a trail 10K can still be fun.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be some massive thing. It's just a matter of like, I cycle between, for me, some of these smaller races, it's that I don't train for the race. I put the race to keep me training.
Oh, absolutely.
So a little bit different way of looking at it. And so, but then that sometimes flip-flops, sometimes, especially with like more of like an A race thing, like, okay, well, I know like I've got to put the miles in on that, because, between mile 18 and 27 is an absolute monster climb, and you better be ready for that. Like there's no faking it on that. So, so I think 3 is a good number.
Yeah. And a couple of things. I have a client, her name's Beth right now, and she's actually about to go run Bandera tomorrow. And I think sometimes she probably thinks I hate her because I have to restrict some things, but she knows I'm there for her best interest. But she's a great example. She loves biking. She likes fat biking, mountain biking, gravel races, and stuff like that. And if you do have something that's not going to directly destroy you in the running world, that gives you a little mental break as well, like you can add some of those events in there as well. Like to her specific training, she's running Bandera this week. We're gonna recover from that. She's doing Arrowhead 135, which is a winter fat bike race, which is going to be a completely different experience than any kind of running. Like it's going to be more mental and sleep deprivation than the same physical needs that you need for a big run. But she can go do that, and I'm not worried about her beating herself up too much for what her big year-long goals are. Like one of her big year-long goals is doing the Lead Woman up in Leadville. So biking is important for that anyway, So if you have other things that aren't going to deplete yourself that aren't running related, that's really healthy as well. And then just a big point for anybody out there, overtraining is way more rare than you think it is, even though people use the term for just about anything. But like, if like these terms come from things that happen to you physiologically, they're not just from like a mental state, although a mental state does affect overtraining as well. But if you're not enjoying the journey, you're not enjoying the day-to-day training, and all you're craving is these events, then something's probably off in your scheduling, in your lifestyle. It could be interpersonal, work, sleep, stress. It could be a million different things. But if you are trying to enjoy endurance sports and you don't enjoy the process, then something is probably a little off. So back off a little bit and take as objective a look at yourself and your habits as you can to see why you aren't enjoying those things. Because the clients that I've worked with in the past and currently that really dive into the training part of it and just use the events as a celebration of the training are the ones who freaking do really well too. So keep that in mind. I think that's important.
Yeah.
For the psychological aspect of it all.
Yeah.
All right. I got some questions. You want to dive into some of these bad boys?
Dive in.
All right. Actually, this is hilarious. Beth, who I was just talking about, asked, convince me why I needed rest day instead of active recovery on my bike. Well, sometimes you don't need a rest day and you can do active recovery on your bike, Beth. But just since you asked the question, 100 miles is not active recovery. Just throw that out there. That's just one example. I love Beth. She's freaking hilarious.
What would you say is active recovery?
Conversational, not pounding, like get the blood flowing, 45, 60 minute, 60-minute max, maybe hike instead of run. Something that you don't feel like is a workout, but is still activity.
I think, that's a great one, because I think sometimes we need permission to be able to do those things. I had a surgery back in November and, I couldn't run for a bit, but I could hike, and just, man, like there's just these feelings of guilt, like I'm not running, even though like it's just so ingrained. And I think that, coming from a coach, like yourself, that's like says, no, give yourself permission to be able to do that kind of stuff, can be super helpful.
Yeah. And like I give a lot of clients flex days, which is taking advantage of the days that you feel really good. Like there's so many days when you have to push yourself out the door when you don't want to go. So I think on the flip side, you need to be able to go run when you have an off day scheduled. So I give people flex days, and flex days are usually like 3 to 5 miles, just to take advantage of nervous energy or good energy, and you can get away without taking too many off days and have active recovery. But there are places in the training schedule where a hard off is important too. And it's just kind of case by case. All right, this one's from Bailey. Bailey is where I live, and Bailey is a person's name as well. And she was actually in season 10 out in Boise. Good question. Should you plan for times when you're not training for a race and just hitting maintenance exercises? It feels very easy to just keep signing up for events. It's very addicting. Feels like we talked about this a little bit. Jay, I don't know, like even if you're not a coach, like what would you say to Bailey? Because I've talked to Bailey about this stuff here and there. What would you say?
I think it's doing, like, really being able to define what your purpose is around doing all of this. What's the reason why you're doing it? That's always at the root of all of this. Like, why do we run? Why do we want to do races? What am I going to accomplish from that? I think for a long time, just personally, I felt like I had to do races. And then I went through a period where I didn't do any races at all. And quite frankly, my running was better at that point because it didn't feel like I have to. It felt like it was just because I wanted to. And then the pendulum swung back the other way, where like races are a lot more interesting now. So yeah, I think listening to your body and really understanding what your why is behind this can help guide what those things are. And but then there are some people that just, I think that they're genetically gifted and they can pound it, and do stuff that's like unbelievable, and they get a lot of satisfaction from that. But I caution people on burnout. I think that can be a real thing in this sport. I've got a running group that I've been a part of now for like 11 years, and it's an amazing trail running group that we all summer long we meet, and it's just interesting to see the people cycle in and out as they go through different phases of burnout or disinterest or life or those kinds of things. So having a really strong why can help you through that.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back from the scientific standpoint. It goes to your preseason, your off season. Like scheduling an off season is pretty beneficial, and like in Bailey's situation, trying to plan an off season and knowing that she's just chomping at the bit to go run. I completely get it, but just being okay with not hitting the same volume sometimes is going to make you a better and stronger runner in this instance, for sure.
And one of the thing is, and this is just me personally, but like part of the reason why we have this saying, and this is on our thing, and it says endurance for life. But the reason why I came up with that tagline for the company is because like I want to be able to do running forever. Like I don't ever want to not be a runner. Like, I don't ever want to say like because I can't. And so I think that looking at what our bodies are capable of and giving them the rest and recovery that's needed in order for that longevity, because I've seen a lot of people who like go and they do monster training for like a 100, and then they do that, and now they're not running for the next 6 because of some big injury that they've gotten. And so I just think like there's this, and again, this is for me personally, but like I want to be able to run like forever. And so I would much rather not do 100 and not, because I just know that like my body, like what I'm capable of, and I'm gonna injure something and then not be able to run. And I don't want to get into that situation.
Yeah. I've talked to, if I ever write a personal book in the training world, it would be called The Seasons of Fitness, honestly. And it's just because I've noticed just the ebb and flow of the psychology of staying engaged with your training. And as a team sport athlete coming into the endurance world, like there's a lot of lifting and a lot of power. And I didn't realize how much I enjoyed that until I started doing lots of endurance stuff. So like from November to end of January, typically for me, it's more heavy weights, it's more build muscle, set myself up for less injuries when it comes to spring and summer, when we really want to run these big mountains. And it's served me well. Like my injuries have been pretty low. Clients' injuries generally pretty low. It's hard to keep everybody from getting injured in this repetitive sport, but it's really important.
Yep.
Oh, this is so funny. So we're talking about this in that question that Bailey just sent. Peyton said, I have this issue too about signing up for too many events. And then Peyton just texted me that she's signing up for a race. But everybody, this is not an extra race. This is like within the constructs of her goals. Anyway, she's actually a client. Rebecca, how do you space out your races throughout the year? How do you choose races that help prepare for the A race? We kind of answered that. Train throughs, ramp up your mileage with your races like you would for just general training. So I think we answered that a little bit. Carly Hurd, how do you rebound after a shitty race experience? Well, Carly, since I was there after Smith Rock, when you literally crossed the line and said you hate running and you'll never do it again, or something to that extent, I think you rebounded pretty well. We hopped on some rentals out in Bend, Oregon, and rode around to some breweries, and that seemed to do just fine, because I know you've killed it and you've qualified for Boston since. So I think you figured that out. Mo, how do you rebound from the DNS of your A race and keep from getting sick every other week? That's not really a scheduling thing. I think rebounding from a DNS is more of a psychological issue. I think going into any training block, knowing that anything can happen at any given time is pretty important. And like you're not ever planning to DNS, but knowing that there's a potential for something like that to happen is important. Let's see here. Caitlin asks, should we schedule an off season focusing on lower volume with no running? What's the ideal timing for that? So the ideal timing for that is recover from your big event, give yourself a week or two. Like the standard that myself and a lot of ultra coaches follow for recreational athletes, which is most people, is about a week of recovery for every 25 miles or so. And that's not complete recovery. Like there's active recovery in there, but it's just like no formal hardcore training. Make sure all the inflammation's gone and that you're healed up before you go push yourself a little bit. I mean, there's some freaks out there in the elite world that give themselves like 4 days after 100. And that's superhuman, you know? So, but yeah, give yourself a little recovery, and then the off season, like a couple months, we'll say 4 to 8 weeks after your A race is a great place to put your off season in, because usually you kind of want to break from formal training, running anyway. So that seems to work pretty well. Amy Jones, she's up in Alaska trying to train for her first ultra. Just happens that that's not easy, Jay. Can you imagine training for your first ultra, living in Alaska and working night shift and going to school full time? That's her. She's one of the runners for the season.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a tough one, man. How do you prevent
Yep.
getting injured? Just listen to your coach. That's what I would say on that one.
Yeah.
have a personal.
Well, and listen to your body too, right? I mean, there's different kinds of pain. I mean, there's the kind of pain that we all quote unquote enjoy, of like, man, like that's really stretching me. And then there's the pain of like, okay, something's wrong. And knowing the difference between the two is I think a key part of it.
That's so funny, because we have Eli asking this next question. What does listening to your body really mean? How do you know when your body is leading you astray? This is a long one, but I'm going to read it. I took some time off from everything because this has been a really tough year mentally, and it felt right. Now I'm just starting to get back at it and having some arch issues, probably a little plantar fasciitis and focusing on my calves. But do I listen to the one side of my brain that says, I think you back up a little bit too intensely, need to go easy on yourself because you're 52 damn years old? You're 52? Oh, so let's take a few days off till it settles. Or do I listen to the other side of my brain that says it's going to be fine, it's not getting worse, just keep working on your calves, run through the discomfort? Luckily, there's no side of my brain telling me to just sit on the couch and have more snacks.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, everybody deals with that issue, and it feels so personal when it's you that's dealing with it. But there are growing pains with ramping up volume. The standard that I've always kind of followed is, if it's not affecting gait and it's not affecting you when you're not running, and you do see improvements, then you can continue on. But usually it's a volume too fast thing. Just to kind of put a general answer to that. CBD, Jay's products might help a little bit on there. Not to pitch hard, like we haven't pitched hard at all this thing, but I think trying to be objective with where the pain's coming from and seeing if something like that could help you would be beneficial as well.
Yeah.
All right. We'll do a couple more. We got a lot of these things. Amanda Fomar, can you explain the importance of a good physiological strong taper in a macro cycle? How should and could this play into race planning? Perhaps why do not run a 50K every month? And she's heard me preach this probably before. How should pace or effort play into your races that are training efforts for your A race? Will this depend on the specific training? We kind of covered that stuff. It just depends on what the goal is for the A race and where those train through races happen to be. And sometimes you can use one of these races as the second part of a big back-to-back, just so you're around people for your second part of the big back-to-back. So it's a psychological benefit. The physiological taper is just huge because you need the adaptations from your training to take hold, and you can't just continue to pound yourself into the ground, especially that 7 to 12 days before a big race. So it's allowing you to recover a little bit. It's allowing those adaptations to occur. I don't know if any taper is perfect, but scientifically it makes sense. So yeah, keep that in mind. Do you have any good taper stories, Jay? Do you have a hard time with it? A lot of people have a hard time with the taper.
Oh, I feel so guilty, man. I'm just like, honestly, like that's almost the hardest part of the training is the week before the race, where, cause it feels like it's evaporating, every day, like my fitness is just evaporating. But I think over time and you gain experience, it gets better. And I think early on, I had a forced taper where I got sick like the week before a race. And so, I was forced to not do anything, just very, very minimal, just because I was sick. And fortunately, I recovered and was okay in time for the race. But I had that forced, be on the couch, just drink a lot of fluids, do all the things I was probably supposed to do on a taper, so to speak, just because of an illness. But yeah, I feel guilty. It feels like it's evaporating, but it's gotten a little better over time.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Like the common cold type thing in the beginning of the taper, it's fairly common. And honestly, when it happens to clients, I get kind of happy, even though I feel bad that they're miserable for a couple of days, but it forces them into what I need them to do anyway. A lot of times, and I've had it happen to me before big efforts. And you're so angry and you're so pissed that you can't keep doing your thing. But if you can heal up a couple of days before the race, man, I've always had good experiences personally.
Yeah, and also like if you ever get a chance to then see the difference between that, like, okay, well, I didn't taper, boy, that was, the last half of the race like totally sucked. Or I did taper and like, man, I want to go out and do that again. That was the most enjoyable experience ever. That's what I want every time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know any coach that would rather have their clients overworked at the start line than we would all. I don't know any coaches out there that are listening. If you would like your clients to be overtrained, you just let me know, because like life happens, and if you're a little fresher because your mileage is a little lower or your efforts weren't as good the last couple of weeks, it's so much better for people.
Yep.
Actually, I think we'll be able to get through these questions. We have 4 or 5 more, and everybody took the time to ask them, so we'll answer these things. This is from Megan and Kale Pearson. This is a shared Facebook account, so I don't know who's asking this. How can you take from what you learn from running, apply it to other parts of your lives? Many of us don't find balance. It's all go all the time, but just like in running, we have to find a balance. We have to slow down and focus on little things, and sometimes that leads us to find a better quality of life. I think a practical application with that would be to use a calendar, like what we've been talking about today, and look at it and have a visual representation of where you're spending your time. And if you got scribbles and highlighter and Post-its all over the damn thing, then maybe you need to back off a little bit and make sure you're giving some time to your family and yourself in a different way. I don't know. We have kids, and like kids throw a wrench into scheduling and all this stuff. And I think just flexibility and lowering expectations a little bit can kind of force you to be happier in a lot of ways.
It's amazing. I think just in my experience, ultra running is just such a great reflection of life in general. And, there are times during your run where you're going up a super long climb and it feels like it's never going to end. Just like in life, there's difficulties that you're going through that feel like they're never going to end, but ultimately they do. And you get some downhill, and like in life, you get some great times, but that is just this, it doesn't stop, and it's continuous. And I think that having those really great training moments, because to me, I think the races are one thing, that's sort of like the reward, if you will, or that's the part of it, but it's that whole journey going up to that of injury and getting up at 5 a.m. and all those kind of very difficult things that help create that grit and resilience to handle so many difficult things in life outside of running.
Yeah, this one's going to be fun, Jay. You don't have your master's in exercise science, and I think you're going to be able to answer this question. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
This is from Madeline up in the Northwest. I think she's in Oregon. Any thoughts on rest time between runs? For example, I have a feeling this is a personal example. You get off of work at 1 a.m. and you go run, but you can only fit in the next day's run at 5 a.m. Is a 4-hour rest time sufficient?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
No.
I wouldn't do that. I can't. Yeah. I mean, no, like, yeah, that's not, I do know the people that do back-to-backs or excuse me, doubles on a day.
Yeah,
right? They may do something in the morning and then they go out and they do it in the afternoon, but 4 hours, that's not going to be enough time.
This tells me a couple of things. She's badass. Like, she works her butt off. She's dedicated, all those things, but also maybe a glutton for punishment. And very rarely in your training cycle is sleep deprivation a skill that we want to work on. It is a skill. You should probably expose yourself to, like, if you're going to do a 100-miler or even 100K, most people can get between sleep cycles. Yeah, for that long stuff, maybe it's important, but in every once in a while, if you just don't sleep well, like, that's part of life. But to run at 1 a.m. and then go sleep and wake up at 5 a.m., like, your sleep quality is going to be crap anyway, because your metabolism is jacked up after that first event and your endorphins are kicking. So you're probably not even going to sleep that well anyway. So a couple things, maybe if you're wired after work and that's just works for you to burn off some energy, maybe do that and then sleep in the next day. Maybe get that 6 hours instead of 4 hours, or go to sleep if you can. I know anybody who's working these types of shifts are probably working high stress jobs. If you can go to sleep right after work and get up early and run a little bit further, but don't get all the miles back. But generally speaking, that's going to lead to really, really nasty fatigue and potentially injury. So I would say get some sleep, Madeline. Good job during your exercise science internship, Jay. You answered that very well. All right, Candy out of Georgia. Is it possible to do a race series, trail 5K or 10K, about one per month-ish, and fit it into a training plan? Yeah, it's possible. I mean, everything else has got to be, I mean, the shorter stuff is definitely not as big an issue. And if we can get ultra runners to run fast at 5Ks and 10Ks, it's going to benefit you from a biomechanics standpoint, running economy standpoint. All those things are going to benefit. It just has to make sense where your fitness is right now. Like, if that's all you're doing, then no. If it's part of your volume, then yeah, one per month of the shorter stuff, I think is no problem. Oh, I haven't run a 5K hard in a while. Have you run a 5K hard in a while?
Gosh, I did a 7K a couple of years ago. It was a St. Patrick's Day thing here in town, and that I didn't even know how to run a 7K. It was good. It was good. Yeah.
I just remember like when I was younger, I was not a runner. I was playing baseball in college and then ran a couple 5Ks with people, and without any running fitness, like I could run a sub 20 without any running fitness, just because I had decent form and I'm psychotic and I can push through some pain. But man, it sounds awful right now.
Yeah, totally.
All right, this is from Lena out in Norway. When you're a fairly new long distance runner, how soon can you ramp up? Example, marathon to 50K, 50K to 60K, 60 to 50 miles, etc. I think it just depends on that first big training cycle, how your body responds to it. You got to put the work in before you know how you're going to respond to the volume. A lot of people like to train for that first ultra where it lands like early in the summer. And if you respond to that pretty well, it gives you a good 4 or 5 month chunk before the best time of year to race, which I think is in the fall. Because you had all the summer miles, you didn't have to deal with weather as much. You're probably able to get some good volume, and then you can go a little bit longer in the fall. So a few months makes sense, but it's case by case, I think.
Scott, how would you consider vertical in that?
I mean, vertical is way less. It's way less work on your body, which is a positive thing, right? But if you don't have access to vertical in your training, then that could be an issue. But
yeah, like in other words, if you're because they're not all created equal, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
You could do a marathon in Austin, Texas, or you could do a half marathon, in Silverton, Colorado, and they're, two very different races.
Yeah.
So some of it seems like it's taking into account what's the vertical of that race that you want to do as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not even the same sport. Like if you go run a fairly flat 50K in Florida and then you come run like Leadville, it's not even the same sport. I mean, the needs are completely different on your body. So yeah, I would definitely look at what the physiological needs are, for Leadville, like leg strength and just downhill skills and technical skills are going to be important. If you're running in Florida, like speed work and tempo type stuff is going to be more important. So yeah, I would definitely look at the stats or the specs on the event that you're racing for sure.
Yeah.
And then from a training standpoint, once you get over 50K anyway, like for recreational athletes, it doesn't mean that your mileage is going to double. Like if you go from 50K to 100K, your training mileage isn't doubling. We're looking for different stimulus, but it doesn't mean you just go pound yourself into the ground either.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last one. Dave Goins. When returning from injury, he ran in season 10. What's the best approach to rebuilding your base? What should be incorporated? What's the timeline?
I like this.
Because I've been injured before. I'm sure you've been injured before, Jay. We all want to know the timeline because we just want to get back. And the timeline is based on your adherence to what your PT or your doctor or your coach is telling you. So your timeline off of some injuries could be a year, because some people's attention isn't to the things that are going to make them better. It's just getting back out there over and over and over and continuing to hurt themselves. So it's kind of a loaded question, and it could be a whole episode, honestly, but the best approach is starting slow and allowing your body to slowly get back into it, making sure that you're not hurting yourself again, paying attention to the injury, but not paying attention to it so much that you're running differently or moving differently. The psychological part. I mean, I've worked with so many power athletes that have come off of being cleared from their PT, and then the PT is done. They don't do the performance after that. You get a soccer player or a football guy who's cleared from the ACL or MCL or some kind of major ankle issue, and they are 100% cleared from their doctors and PTs. But when you see them move, they're not psychologically cleared yet. So you got to build that confidence in movement before you can really start ramping up. And then there's always a point where you just have to freaking cut the cord and go for it after injury. Yeah. And it's really hard for people.
One thing that happens with injuries, and fortunately, knock on wood, I haven't had a lot of injuries, but like I had a surgery in November that knocked me out. And then one of the things that happens is we get, as runners, we get very ingrained in routine. And when you're knocked off that routine to where now your routine is completely different, there's that shift to get that routine back. And sometimes there's a lot of friction in getting that routine back. As part of it's just making it back into that habit again of like, yep, this is what I do. This is what I do, even though, and doing all those kinds of habit type things that you get out of during that injury phase. And getting that back can sometimes be a challenge.
Yeah. And the hard part for runners is we get addicted, rightly so, to the endorphins of the effort and the mental health aspect of it. Like, it clears your head. And most PT and pre and rehab stuff is really freaking boring. And I work with clients in person 2.5 days a week at the gym, and the things that I do with them are the things that are so hard that they would never do it on their own, and the things that are so boring and basic that they don't do it on their own. And we'll do the stuff in the middle too, but those things are really important. Mobility and tib anterior work and band work, like the stuff that we've all seen or heard our PTs tell us, but after a couple of weeks you get bored of it. So I think just being disciplined on that, and then maybe kind of calling back to that Seinfeld concept of not missing 2 days in a row of your goal. Like for your PT and strength work, using the calendar or some kind of visual to reinforce those positive habits that are going to keep you healthy is really important too.
Great point. Cool.
Holy crap. Those are great questions, man. And I've heard, I answer lots of these questions on a regular basis, but when it's personal to the individual, and you're speaking to an individual that is going through some of these things, it's kind of nice to address them. And hopefully by using some of the tools that we've talked about with the calendar and being visual with your whole year, and using some of the tools that you guys have as a company, and using the tools that we put out there for resources for people, hopefully we're creating healthier and better athletes for the long haul. Because I'm the same way. Like every time I meet somebody that's 75 years old, I subtract my age from them and say, okay, I got this many more years, to be able to do this cool stuff.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's terrific. And well, thanks for the opportunity to be able to come on here and share some of this stuff. And listen, I think all those questions, it's all the, the shared experience of others that can help us all, because whether someone has a question, that specific question today, all those questions we're gonna run into at some point. Those are all great sort of universal questions I think we all want answers to and support with.
Yep. And it's a great conversation to have early in the year, because this is when people are sitting in front of Ultra Sign Up and drinking that extra glass of wine and making maybe bad decisions. I don't know. Jay, thanks so much, man. You guys can go to the links we're talking about, vengacbd.com/becoming ultra. You can use Becoming Ultra 15 for 15% off all the stuff over there, right? Yep. Except for apparel, right? No, not off the apparel stuff.
Not apparel or bundles. Bundles are already heavily discounted. So just go in there, your first purchase, Becoming Ultra 15, get 15% off of that. Ship everywhere. And if you have any questions, we've got live chat, email, phone. We're happy to talk to anybody. And give guidance on this thing, because I know it can be confusing sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I get inquiries from people who listen to the show all the time. They know how busy I am and how much I work on this stuff. But if you guys are looking for some guidance and a coach, I got a handful of slots left open for this coming year. So I think I got 5 or 6 slots left. So don't be shy because you think I'm busy. I am busy, but I'm ready to help a few more of you guys, at least on the one-on-one situation. So Jay, this was awesome, man. Really appreciate your time.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.